Good morning. Thank you for everyone appearing here today. We felt it was important to let everyone know we have now filed this complaint against both Hugh Hefner and Mr. Cosby for the actions that they took back in 2008 and leading up to that incident. Our complaint that we filed on behalf of our client, Chloe Goins, is for both sexual battery, gender violence, negligent infliction of emotional distress, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit a sexual battery. We've alleged in our complaint, and we believe that we can prove at this time, that not only was Mr. Cosby responsible for the heinous acts against our client and many other women, but that Mr. Hefner was complicit in not only our incident, but for a history of violence against women. Women that were invited to the Playboy Mansion over the years, and allowing Mr. Cosby to take these actions against young women that were invited to that home over the years. We hope to hold them both accountable in civil court, and our case has been filed now in Circuit Civil Court out in Los Angeles County in California with the assistance of our local counsel.
Our law firm has chosen to take a stand in this case. With our law firm's history of representing the victims of sexual crimes against them and the gender violence that's occurring in our society frequently, and Mr. Kuvin especially has taken a lead role in many cases in making sure that our daughters and mothers and everyone in our lives is protected against sexual predators. Unfortunately, in this case, it's a sexual predator who is basically a serial sexual predator against more than 50 women have come forward against Mr. Cosby, and many of these were with his friend Hugh Hefner in California, and that's why we decided to bring in Mr. Hefner, because this was what we believe to be a long-standing conspiracy between Mr. Hefner and Mr. Cosby.
What's important to remember is no matter how rich, powerful, or famous you are, we'll find you, and we will hold you accountable for the actions that you've taken over the years. The world has changed from how it was in the 50s and the 60s, and attitudes against women and the treatment of women has changed over the years. And we will hold you accountable for those actions. And it will not continue, and it's not going to continue as long as we're out representing women that are subject of that sexual violence against them over the years. So at this point, if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them.
You're representing just this one woman.
Correct.
But you're alleging there were many more women the same thing happened to at the mansion?
At this time, our investigation led us to believe that there were other women who have both contacted us since the initial filing and who we have discovered through our own independent investigation that this has occurred to at the mansion that have yet to come forward in the public.
About how many women?
Really not at liberty to discuss the volume or number or even names at this point, because it's our work product at this point.
This incident that you're talking about, you say it happened in 2008. Some of the ones we've heard about have been much farther back, in 20 years, even more, longer back. Is there any sort of criminal case right now? Because I assume that the statute of limitations is not over on this particular case.
As you know, and it has been reported in the media, the case with my client, Ms. Goins, was pending at the LA County District Attorney's Office. They chose not to prosecute her case because of the time that it had taken and the discovery of evidence that they were unable to uncover for a criminal investigation. But much like the case that's now pending in Philadelphia, we hope that by the discovery and our civil action, we'll be able to supplement that information for the LA District Attorney's Office. And since charges were never actually filed, hopefully one day through our discovery process and the civil action, he will be brought to justice in criminal court, which is what our client wants.
So you're saying the Philadelphia case could help your...
Not only the Philadelphia case, but our case and the civil discovery that we undertake in our litigation could help us supplement the information that the criminal justice system has not been able to find yet.
So there's no statute of limitations on the criminal nature of what he's accused of?
There are certain crimes that the district attorney's office has advised us that he could be charged with if we're able to uncover that evidence in the civil discovery process. So as a result, things such as rape and other sexual battery crimes do not have the same statutes of limitations as others, and therefore, just like the Philadelphia case can be brought into the future, yes.
Can you be a little more specific on what her allegation has happened to her?
Yes. And I think it's been widely reported. Our client was invited to an event at the Playboy Mansion. She went to that party, and when she attended that party, she was then approached by Mr. Hefner and Mr. Cosby together. They had discussions. Mr. Cosby offered to get her a drink, her and her friend. He went off and left and got them both drinks. Came back, gave our client a drink. She began drinking it, and it was about 3/4 of the way through it when she started feeling sick and nauseous and lightheaded. At that point, Mr. Hefner asked if she'd like to go to one of the rooms and lie down, at which point she said sure, and Mr. Cosby offered to take her to that room. He then took her off to one of the rooms in the mansion, and she blacked out on the way to the room. The next thing she recalled, she was waking up in a bed on her back without any clothes on, and Mr. Cosby was down by her toes, and what woke her was that he was biting one of her toes. She was startled, woke up. Mr. Cosby noticed that she was waking up. He then quickly stood up, pulled his pants up, and left the room. At that point, our client gathered her clothes together, which were lying on the ground, her shoes, her dress, and ran out.
So are you alleging she was sexually assaulted?
Yes, absolutely, she was sexually assaulted.
Are you alleging that she was drugged?
Absolutely, we have alleged that she was drugged. We believe that the drink that she was given contained some kind of drugging mechanism that blacked her out.
And this was what date this happened?
It was back in 2008.
And she never went to the police, or did she ever report it?
No, and much like most women who are subject of sexual violence and battery, she was embarrassed, scared, afraid. Her friend said, "Don't ever say a word about this. You'll never get invited back to the mansion again. No one's going to believe you. He's rich, he's powerful, he's famous. Who's going to believe you?" And it wasn't until the women started coming out and joining together to tell their stories that she felt safe enough at that point to come forward and tell her story.
Had she been to the mansion ever before that?
No,
That was her first visit.
that was her first.
Did she know Mr. Cosby or Mr. Hefner? And
I mean, no more than anyone else would know them. They're TV celebrities. But no, she had no prior experience with either one of them other than their public personas.
and she went there invited by...
It was a girlfriend that had invited her as a +1 to go to the mansion for a party. She was excited. She was a young, impressionable teenager that was excited to be invited to a party, as any, excitable young woman may be, to go to a large party.
And so you think Mr. Hefner was complicit in, not that he sexually assaulted her, but just complicit in facilitating Mr. Cosby's action?
Correct. Correct. We have not alleged that Mr. Hefner took any direct action by sexually assaulting our client or any women, but we have alleged, and we do believe that we can prove, that Mr. Hefner was complicit and either knew or should have known what his good friend Mr. Cosby had been doing to women for years, not only at the mansion, but outside in his public life and throughout.
So you would be seeking what kind of damages?
Right now, my client is seeking justice. That's all she wants. She went to the criminal justice system first. Unfortunately, they were unable, because of the time that had passed, to be able to marshal the evidence necessary to criminally prosecute him beyond a reasonable doubt. But we believe that the civil justice system, much like in the O.J. Simpson case and others, where the criminal justice system, we believe, failed, we can then hold him accountable in the civil justice system.
How old was she when this allegedly happened?
The key to this case is not her age. It is the fact that she was a young woman who this occurred to in 2008. We believe that regardless of her age, that we can prosecute this claim effectively under California law.
But were you also mentioning she was a teenager at the time?
She was. She was in her teens. It was 2008, and what we think is important is that as a teenager, a young, impressionable young woman, that this should not occur to someone regardless of age.
What's California law with civil cases, and is there any cap on damages, or can you say?
No, and we've also alleged that these acts were punitive as well, which in the punitive nature, not only can they be held accountable for compensatory damages, in other words, damages to help her with therapy and treatment and medical care that she may need, but also punitive damages to punish them for what they've done to her.
Has anybody been successful with civil cases against Cosby or not yet?
No, but there are many cases currently in the works. Judy Huff's case in California is currently pending. You've got another case, which is a criminal action pending up in Philadelphia, as well as a couple of others that are pending, I believe, by Miss Allred's firm.
So there is a criminal case in Philadelphia.
That's currently pending, yes. There is currently a criminal case being prosecuted right now up in Philadelphia, which we are following, and we've been in discussions with the attorneys up there and following what's going on.
And your client right now, at the time, was she living in LA?
Yes.
Does she still live in LA?
We don't want to talk about her whereabouts right now. She's already been hounded by media and press. All we can say is right now our client is safe and at home with family.
How old about is she now?
She's currently 26. Yeah, in fact, her birthday was just the other day on May 17 of 2016.
Can you talk about the importance, this is the first time we really have heard Hugh Hefner's name brought into any of this. Can you talk about how important and significant it is that you guys are naming him in this suit?
Sure. I think it's important to remember that Hefner, Mr. Hefner, has built his reputation and life, in fact, on what we believe to be and what some others have reported as the exploitation generally of women in the industry. The entertainment industry, the news industry, magazines, parties, and whatnot. For years, that's how he's made his living. We believe that it would be completely unbelievable to think that he did not know what Mr. Cosby was doing to these women over the 30-plus years of their friendship together, not only at the mansion, but outside of the mansion, at other Playboy parties and events, as well as even privately. So these men have been friends for years. One of them, outwardly, has been exploiting women. The other has had a secret persona for years where he's been drugging and abusing women.
I hate to go back to the age matter, but if she's 26 now, and that's 8 years ago, was she 18 or 17?
Well, again,
Because the criminal prosecution would be different if she were underage.
obviously the criminal prosecution would be different based upon her age, but right now we're under the civil justice system, and for us, for our matters, we don't care. She was a teenager, she was a young, impressionable girl, so we seek to hold him responsible regardless of whether she was 17, 18, 13, or 20. It doesn't matter to us. Criminally, we can't take any action because we're not criminal attorneys. We're not the district attorney's office.
I know, but why not just say she's 17 or she was 18?
Well, because one of the things is given the fact that 8 years have passed, she doesn't exactly have a date that she can point to for that event or that party.
So we don't know whether she was 17 or 18.
Think back to when any one of us was 17 or 18 years old, 8 years in the past. Someone invites you to go to a party. Do you remember, could you tell me as you sit here today the exact day that you were invited to that party, the exact date that you went? No, it's not realistic. She's being honest in the fact that she doesn't remember the exact date. But again, it doesn't matter the date that it happened. This is something that happened. No one can deny, other than obviously Mr. Cosby or Mr. Hefner, that it happened. It happened to her. It affected her. It affected her life, just as it affected numerous other women that Mr. Cosby did this to.
Obviously, the standards for civil are different from criminal.
Right.
So can you talk about maybe what is your best evidence or your best, other than her description of events?
Obviously, the civil discovery process has just started. We've been in the process of uncovering additional facts, information, witnesses over the last months. We initially, as you know, filed this case in federal court out in California. After the criminal case was concluded by the district attorney's office and they decided that they did not have enough information at that time to file charges, which what is important to remember is that's what they advised us. There wasn't enough information at that time. We then went back to the drawing board, got additional evidence, additional witnesses, marshaled it together, uncovered what we did against Mr. Hefner, and refiled now in state court. Those witnesses, those documents, that information, I don't want to frankly give it up now because all it will do is allow Mr. Cosby and Mr. Hefner's lawyers to prepare for what we know is coming.
So what's next in this legal process? When's the next court date? Have the other parties responded to you guys?
We've been in communications with Mr. Cosby's lawyers as we have in the past, and Mr. Cosby's lawyers have said that they're going to accept service of the complaint on his behalf. So we're in the process of doing that at this time. Once they've accepted service of the complaint, then they'll respond in kind. At this time, we haven't heard anything from Mr. Hefner's lawyers, but when we do, we're happy to accept service for him, or we'll serve him personally right at the mansion.
So they have not been served yet?
No.
Officially?
No, we filed the complaint, and as I said, we've been talking to Mr. Cosby's lawyers about accepting service, and we're in the process of determining whether or not Mr. Hefner's lawyers will do the same.
Are these his lawyers in Philadelphia?
No, it'll likely be lawyers out in California. The ones we've been talking to for Mr. Cosby have been in California. It's been the Quinn Emanuel firm in L.A.
The Quinn Emanuel.
Yes.
And so is there a court date set or not yet until people?
No, not until they answer the complaint.
Okay.
How long of a process do you think this could be? Let's say you get a court date. How long of a trial?
It really depends on the number of witnesses. We intend to call all of Mr. Cosby's victims to the stand to testify about what happened to them. We believe that they all have a story to tell of a modus operandi. Much like a serial killer has a signature, Mr. Cosby has a signature. He drugs women and takes advantage of them when they're unconscious. So we believe all of those women can establish that modus operandi. Given that, a trial could be weeks or even months, given the number of witnesses that we intend to call.
And when do you think you might get to court on this?
I'll let you answer that.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
realistically, a year, 6 months?
The California court system is as jam-packed with cases just like the Florida court system, so it really depends on the judge you get and how many cases that judge has on their docket. Could be 1,000 cases on the docket. So most court systems in different states are 6 months to 3-4 years, to be honest.
And are you guys licensed in California? Will you be working the case directly, or do you have other associates in California that would actually be trying the case?
answer to that is both. We're not licensed in California, but we will be working the case directly from here in West Palm Beach, as well as out in California, where we travel to frequently, but we have local counsel that's assisting us who is licensed out in California. We'll do what they call pro hac vice in, meaning a friend of the court will be stepping in if with the court's approval, and that at that point we can then practice before the court in California.
So you won't physically get up, but that person has to kind of appear before the judge, or you?
Oh, no. Once we are allowed to practice before the court, once we've made our application and that application's been admitted by the California judge, then we'll be able to appear directly in the case and respond at motions, hearings, depositions, and otherwise. Trial.
She's not from here, but can you explain how you got involved, how she found you?
As Mr. Goldenfarb mentioned, my practice over the years, I've represented a number of victims against high-profile, wealthy, rich, powerful individuals. In the past, I've represented victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who was a multi-billionaire on the island that was abusing young women underage. And through my contacts and that representation, people who hear stories like Ms. Goins refer her to me for representation and taking on some people that, frankly, some attorneys are either afraid or worried about taking on. I don't mind. I think they all need to be held accountable. I don't care who you are. I don't care how rich you are, how famous you are, or how powerful you are. I will find you and I will prosecute you for what you've done.